Councilors, please take your seats. I'd like to call to order the March 15th, 2018 meeting of the Barnstable Town Council. Please note that tonight's meeting is recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 and that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, I must inquire whether anyone is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. Seeing none, please silence your devices. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call?
Councilors: Friedbender,
Present.
Crocker,
Present.
Cullum, Dagwan, Flores,
Present.
Rapcorsetti,
Present.
Hebert,
Present.
Levesque,
Present.
Neary,
Here.
Schnapp,
Here.
Steinhilber,
Here.
Tinsley,
Here.
Wallace.
Here.
Thank you very much. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, this would be the time for public comment. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak, please come forward, sign in, state your name, and please limit your time to 3 minutes. Anyone? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment, and we'll go right into Town Manager Communications. Town Manager Mark Ells. Welcome, Mark.
Good evening, Mark Ells, Town Manager. I think everybody's up at the college, probably at the Tilden Arts Center with the Youth Commission. I don't know, I hope. Tomorrow's the big day over at HYCC for the 7th graders. So Town Manager's update for the period March 2nd through March 15th. We continue to proceed with our action calendar for our budget. Before you tonight is our capital improvement program for 2019 for a first read. What we'll do, hopefully, with the approval of the council, is allow Director Milne to come up and do an overview, brief overview of the capital budget, so that next week we can get right into the orders. So I think we had done that last year with the operating budget prior to the first night of second read, and that seemed to work well. So
Yeah,
it allowed us
we'll
to get
definitely do that
right
tonight.
down to business. So thank you
Yep.
for allowing us to do that. I've also gone forward with approval of the proposed 2019 fee changes for solid waste, Hyannis Water System, Regulatory Services and Consumer Affairs, and the Water Pollution Control Division, and I modified based on comments from our GIS department and our legal department, the Information Technologies Department fees. Those will all be online, they are all online, under Town Manager proposed fiscal year fees. So if you'd like to take a look at those. I received no public comment beyond the initial meeting that we had. So I usually give a 30-day period so that people can, if they don't get to the hearing, hopefully they have a chance to either, by any and all methods, communicate with me, concerns, support, etc. We continue working with Mass Fish Department, Fish and Wildlife Department, USGS, DEP Water Supply, regarding the future potential water supply wells proposed for that 250-acre parcel northeast of the Hyannis Water System. We're in discussions about the actual schedule when DEP water supply will commence. We have the access agreements for that sampling signed, and Though rather not DEP, Fish and Wildlife will be the other signator on that agreement. But we're in the process through our supervisor of water supply in scheduling that sampling. So that is proceeding. Concurrent with that, we're moving forward with an agreement between Fish and Wildlife, USGS, and the town regarding modeling of the groundwater in and around the pond complex up there on that parcel, and including different scenarios for different potential well locations and different pumping rates. So we're progressing well on that, actually. And, different timelines. So what I'll do next council meeting, or as soon as everything's in place, I'll grab schedules so that you'll have a better feeling of time. We are looking at months, not weeks, to accomplish this. Some of the modeling may take even longer. So I think you'll see the sampling results come back relatively quickly. We continue with the hiring process for the chief of police. The list of applicants and their rankings should be received anytime after today. We're actually looking for that tomorrow, hopefully. Next steps involve identifying the top 3 candidates, reviewing references and backgrounds, then proceeding with the interview process. What I'll do is I want to brief you probably at the next meeting. I want to create an interview panel. We've done our survey. I am in the process of speaking with various groups about what they would like to see, what qualities they would like to see, what experience they would like to see in the next chief. Even though we are doing an in-house review, it's very helpful to hear from our community. And then I plan to pick a fairly broad group representing of our community to participate in an interview panel. Typically, it's not uncommon for me to have 2 sessions, one with a larger group that certainly involves our public, and then a little bit tighter group to make a final decision. This is a very process-oriented. I know I gave you information on the process, so I want to make sure that we don't miss any aspect of it when we truly come forward with a recommendation here. So, but I'll keep you briefed each meeting as to how we progress. I am confident that we will move through this in a timely manner. On Wednesday, the Governor, Secretary Beaton from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, the Cape Delegation, Eversource, the county, and local officials met at the county offices to discuss the ongoing efforts to respond to severe weather events that resulted in power outages and other impacts. I say in this, it was probably an hour to an hour and a half meeting. It really morphed from what I believe we thought would be a working session to discuss kind of concurrent with the response, because as you know, we were in the middle yesterday of a response, a physical response on the ground to clear trees, reset poles, get power back into place and operational in our community. And the last I looked, there was still 2,000 people without power in our community. We opened a shelter in our community, thanks to our police department and the many others who coordinate with our police department to do that. And I think yesterday we had over 20 people there. I don't know total numbers. They did close it at 4 o'clock today, as a majority of the power is on. But again, last look, it was about 7% of our community that still didn't have power. The discussion morphed, though, from kind of a working session to understand where we are and what we can do to assist Eversource in getting power on safely and as efficiently as possible, to more of a press conference, is my observation. There were many press there, and we had our delegation there, and the governor, and the head of the county emergency response, who was, again, active upstairs with his staff trying to assist Cape Cod. But it was more of a back and forth with questioning rather than a roll up your sleeves and say, okay, what are we going to do now, and then what are we going to do next time? The fortunate thing was I sat next to the president of Eversource. And so I got to have, first of all, I got to meet him. And second of all, I got to have a meaningful conversation after the meeting with him. Meaningful in the sense that I think that we need to very actively look at all of our roadways, look at all of the locations of power, and put in place a better plan to maintain those corridors, whether it's roadways or power lines, from an infrastructure standpoint, from and in our case, it's our roadways and the trees that surround our roadways. Once it goes into the lines, we can't go in without Eversource there and active. A lot of our community will call us, frustrated that there's a tree with wires in it. Can't you move it? No, we can't. And there's very strict rules relative to safety at that point. So backing up from that, the discussion that I had was, okay, we've got to have a better plan relevant to trees and maintenance in a way that our community understands and our community is accepting of. And I think Commissioner Kukunis got up there and kind of shared a scenario of what happens to our trees when Eversource comes in and takes the first, the top, and as the different telephone company and cable company all get their little whack at it and what's left. And I think that illustrated exactly what can occur when it's not done in a coordinated method. We had that discussion. We also got a little bit into the discussion of their infrastructure and the age of their infrastructure, given that this is a coastal community. Where are they really in their improvement program, and how does it relate to reliability? The state offered that they have a program in place to help with vulnerability assessments. We've been active in that, but I think that there's a real opportunity here to coordinate better with Eversource so that we all serve the same customer, so that they can do a better job and be more responsive in a safe way. The president said to me, hey, we've got resources. If you've got plans for how you want to do this clearing and this maintenance, we can help. We can be there, not just when we call and say, I've gotten calls recently about Route 6A and truck stage there and which trees are they going to take down. So we've reached out on that. But in a more routine planned manner, I said we should just sit down every year and lay out, okay, what are the major roads? What do our people see? What are you seeing from a electricity or utility delivery standpoint? And let's figure out what we're going to do. And then let's let our public know and make sure that this doesn't become adversarial, but this becomes needed maintenance so we can minimize these sorts of events. I don't know how much they'll share with us on their infrastructure and the age of their poles and the age of their, the utilities that hang on the poles. We didn't go that far, but that could be another issue that they need to address to be more reliable in the delivery of their power source. Certainly the governor was very supportive of his communities and sent a clear message, not that it would be nice if you did this, but this needs to be done. Matt Beaton was their Secretary of Environmental Affairs, who offered the vulnerability and any other support technically, pointed out that there is a window here post-storms to go out there and do some emergency work, more related to coastal resiliency type issues, but there is a window right now through April that we can move expeditiously through permitting processes. So I think that was good, but I think, okay, now what? And that's what we need. We can't just say, oh, good, it's going to be 60 degrees and the sun's going to be out and we're not going to have, another snowstorm that creates this havoc. I think we got to take advantage of this and move forward. So from our standpoint, I'm going to meet with Public Works. I already talked with the director, but we're going to meet. We're going to actively delineate all of our mains, all of our roadways in general, where we have routine brushing, and then we're going to begin to delineate, okay, where do we see the greatest concerns about trees and other issues? We're going to see if we can get them to overlay their utilities, and we'll start a meaningful discussion. So, and I don't know, the president offered it to me, so I don't know how much further I can go than that opportunity. So if I don't grab it, that's a shame. So we are going to grab that opportunity. So we agreed to continue the discussion of the improved emergency services during such events to improve responsiveness and assure safety of our residents. So that's basically what occurred at that meeting. But certainly I'll answer any questions after this next item, and I'm going to ask Elizabeth Jenkins to come up and give you a little overview of another effort we have ongoing. The other issue, we met with Vineyard Wind on March 8th, and I know they had a meeting on Monday, and I know that I received emails back from them regarding that meeting. I think they sent out about 1,500 mailers, but they didn't have, I know I think they had 2 or 3 counselors there, but they didn't have a lot of public show up. Could have been the anticipation of the storm, it could have been many things. What I was meeting with them on was to begin discussions about their host agreement and what they envision for a host agreement. They are proceeding, and I've included in the package, but truly, I don't know that it's worth looking at because you can't see it. But what I did was I emailed Cynthia the electronic copy so that, and if you want, I'll have Jim Benoit blow up bigger versions of the schedule. So I emailed it to Cynthia, you will all have it, and take a look at it. It's a long duration effort. My belief is they're gonna follow that schedule, and whether we're on board or not. And so it makes sense for us, certainly during major milestones in the project, to strategize on how we wanna proceed and to proceed expeditiously. In this case, the next step for us for an active discussion is with the host agreement. What we're going to do over the next couple weeks is use a couple of models that we already have, and that one of them we've used successfully here in Barnstable. We're going to develop what we would like to see come back to us. We'll certainly share that with you and then present it to them in draft. Go from there. And so we are continuing discussions at this point with Vineyard Wind. That concludes my update. I will take the opportunity, I didn't include it in here, to let you know that following events, safety events nationally and even concerns locally, we had meetings last week around a particular event, but following that event with the superintendent and our police chief. And as late as this afternoon, the police chief came back to me identifying that we're going to put additional assets in all of our public schools. That'll commence immediately. And we'll continue that through the end of this school year, and it'll be done in coordination with our superintendent and the principals. Going into next school year and beyond, we will have a strategy for resource deployment. May mirror what we're going to do between now and the end of the year. It may be something different, and it'll all be done in coordination with the superintendent. I don't know that you can prevent an act, an outrageous act from occurring. I do think that you can have a presence, be a deterrent, have good coordination and communication, and we have that. With the chief's suggestions and coordination again with the superintendent, I think we saw a few areas to make parents and our community feel a little bit safer and better. So we are moving on that immediately. That concludes my portion of the presentation. I wanted to ask Elizabeth Jenkins to come up to share with the town council. We're developing an application for an opportunity zone program in Barnstable. The program is designed to drive increased investment in local opportunities with the potential to support business growth, housing growth, commercial construction. So I asked Elizabeth to give you an overview of this because I believe our application comes up, I think it's next week or in the coming weeks. So I thought it would be worth you all being briefed. So I don't know if you want to ask me questions about anything now, or if you want Elizabeth to do hers, and you can just collectively ask them
Why don't we
after.
do your questions first, and then
Sure.
Elizabeth can have the floor. So first, I just want to thank you and the chief and superintendent for putting that plan together so quickly. I know it's something we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, and to see that come together, as quick as it did, really appreciate all the work, and you as well, chief. Any other questions, John? Councilor Flores.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Mark, thank you for the report. Just two quick things. As you are putting together the committee to help you do the interviewing for the next chief of police, have you determined what will be the makeup of the committee? Will there be citizenry? Will there be patrol officers? Will there be... I'm just curious what, if you made that
My
determination.
thought, because the town council ratifies what I will bring forward to you, I don't know that councilors should necessarily be on the committee. I would consider it, but that's not the way that I saw it. I wanted to have a representative group of our public on the committee. I'm not adverse to any of what you've just said and beyond. And again, I probably see a kind of a representative panel initially, and then a final selection that's gonna be a little bit, it'll be myself and the assistant, and probably Bill Cole or Tammy Cunningham from HR. And just to make sure that once we bring forward the recommendation, that we wouldn't be somehow not in violation, but deviating from what civil service requires us to do, so.
I'm just suggesting, you know, in terms of the makeup, that maybe a patrol officer might...
That's a
good
very
addition.
good, very good suggestion, very good suggestion.
They have
Yep,
their
very
feet on
good.
the ground, their boots on the
I'd
ground,
like
so to speak.
somebody, a person of youth. I'd like a mature individual on there. I'd like, yeah, I'm really trying to get, you know, in my questioning, a lot of people have said, well, you know, you're going through an internal process with a kind of rigid, a very rigid set of criteria to make your determination. I really want to ask good questions when we get in there, so that we can get answers. And I think we have excellent candidates, and I think it's going to be a tough choice. That's a good problem to have. So I want to make sure we ask good questions that really, because like I said before, I get to choose the person to bring them forward, but they serve our community. So I want to make sure we've got the community here at the table.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
sir.
just one other quick question. You mentioned the trees on 6A, the Old Kings Highway. There's been a little controversy over the past few weeks that I've brought to your attention relative to Eversource coming in and supposedly cutting down trees that some say are on private property, some say are on public property, some say the trees are public, some say the trees are private, some say the poles belong to Verizon, some say the poles belong to Eversource. Can we somehow, when we put this new plan together, figure out, A, what are the public trees, what are the private trees, as they line up 6A, because 6A is the Old Kings Highway. Trees really help determine the culture and the look and feel.
I will do my best.
If we could.
The discussion that I was having, I wanted to get into, was about exactly that.
Good.
Not only the trees, but the poles, because Barnstable's a bit unique, that
Yes.
many of the poles are Verizon.
Verizon.
So we've got to have, when a pole goes down, it's not just easy like, hey, go bang a new pole in and hang the wires.
Eversource won't touch the pole if it's Verizon.
Well, or if they do, then they've got to charge them back, but there's certain criteria there, and you got to have DigSafe, Verizon, Eversource, and us
And Comcast.
active in the process, and then you've got Comcast hanging there as well. So it becomes complicated. We don't want to be making that decision at a point when our resident doesn't have power, and that can slow processes down. That's all.
And I would just remind all that if in fact the tree is on public property, then supposedly there is an agreement with the Old Kings Highway Commission that they do have to grant approval and go through that process. And I know I had a number of constituents call me over what's gone on the past
That's
month
an
or so.
easy one. That identification for us is relatively easy. And certainly whatever commitments are out there, we would honor. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Councilor Rapcorsetti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the update, Mark. Couple of questions. Was Verizon at that meeting when the governor was there?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
They could have been out and about in the crowd, but not to my, Eversource was there
no.
with their Eversource jackets and cards, and so I knew who they were.
Because the fact that you stated that those are Verizon poles, I think they should be at the table when discussions are going
Yep.
forward.
I would agree.
Also, what's the president of Eversource's name, and did he give you his phone number?
I'll print, what,
I'm only kidding.
what I will do is I will print his card, and I will give it to Cynthia, and you can make a decision how you want to share that.
Fine.
I will always be a conduit for you at any time.
Thank you.
And he's made himself available. I don't know that he knows that. I don't know where that will go. So I don't want to. It's like with the Fish and Wildlife Commissioner. I've developed a really good relationship with him, and so I want to make sure that he answers my calls when I call him.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Also, lastly, high marks to the DPW for their response from the storm. I think the roads, the sidewalks, I was shocked the sidewalks were done so quickly, and kudos to them.
Thank
I know
you,
it's
and
their job, but they did it well.
Thank you. They did it well, and this was a very different event in that the number of tree calls we had was much like a hurricane. We had over 180 tree calls, many of them in wires. We don't normally get that amount, even during a blizzard. You're not really into that number of trees. I don't know if it's because it's late in the season, heavy snow, the ground was wet, the high wind blew the trees over, but it was unique in a sense. But you know, I always measure our success on whether we had anybody hurt, and you know, certainly we had a safe response. I heard for Eversource that they had a very bad accident, I think in Carver. So yeah, so that kind of plays into, I think, a lot of the response questions where they don't go up in the bucket truck until if the wind's over 35 mile an hour, I believe, they don't go up in the bucket. So that was part of why they were waiting so. Everybody felt like it was over, but I think it may have been even midnight or so. It finally got below 20 miles an hour, but you know, before they really, you just saw trucks driving around and they were just looking up to, you know, basically doing a pre-assessment. So, yeah.
You know, one last thing too, we have to remember that it seems like we're very susceptible to devastation during the nor'easters, but in the summertime, when all these trees are leafed out, is really when we're most vulnerable. So that has to be taken into account when we look at our vulnerability
Yes.
of our lines, our Eversource and poles. So, thank you.
Any other councilors? Councilor Hebert?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Mark. One is a question on the Information Technology Department, GIS division. What kind of fees or permits do they put out?
It's not permits, they just, for mapping. Everything that they do is mapping related.
Mapping?
Yeah.
All right. So if people ask for a map, they may be charged for that?
It costs, depending on the size, it costs $1 or $2 or $3 or $4. Originally, they were charging a really odd way, 0.0 cents per, and they went over to just standard sizes, which made a lot more sense.
Awesome, thank
Yeah.
you. And then I just want to give, you already mentioned the emergency shelter, but I did get to visit the emergency shelter in my precinct at the intermediate school. And so kudos really to the AmeriCorps, the United Way, and our police department, which did a magnificent job there. And I went in, and it was a very good feeling there, and you know, people were taking care of each other, so it was beautiful. One thing that we have so many seniors, and we have a lot of people with handicaps, and a lot of people who live alone. So that was one big concern that I had. The longer that we went without the electricity, then I got more concerned for the elderly. So, I mean, I did a wood run to one person so they could keep warm with their fireplace and made sure they had enough food. But when their cell phones go out, if their landline is also dead, which happened at this particular house, it was hard to communicate. And if they wait too long to go to the shelter, so that's why I want to talk about the shelter, just to let the public know it's a good place. People should feel safe to go there. I think they even allow the pet, that you can bring your dog.
They do, it's a pet friend, yeah.
So it's absolutely awesome. We'd rather have that than, you know, find out later after the fact that when it gets too cold in the house, elderly people like myself take a long time to warm up.
You know, it's okay to go over and check on your neighbors.
Yes.
And
yeah.
like, you know, I have a very
Yeah.
young 15-year-old son who can walk over with a shovel and help them out if they need it, and just keep an eye on people. That's a wonderful thing about our community and community in general. I do have to say the schools too as well. Today was a very interesting day. The chief did a great job in coordinating because our public schools reopened and we still had people at the shelter. So thank the superintendent, thank the principal, thank all the kids. I went in there this morning, and police were doing a great job. They were there in presence. I think parents were wondering why they were there, but I think once the kids explained that they were kind of shutting down the shelter, but they needed another day, so thank the schools. We were able to do both, and that's always a concern when you're doing two, very important functions like that, so.
And thank you for the upgrade of our school protection through our police department, because I have seen evidence in my own neighborhood of hate groups, so I'm concerned. So thank you.
Okay. Please identify that to us. Anybody listening, all of you, you know that. I think, right away we put an individual over at the Youth and Community Center who has a permanent presence there, and so many members of our community thanked us for doing that. It's just such a wonderful representation of our community, how we care, our police department, what a great job they do, and I'm sure that this will be the same.
Councilor Schnapp?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mark. I also wanted to send my thanks to the police, public safety. And I was amazed to hear that in Harwich, they had over 400 wellness calls, or well checks, I believe. And I think that speaks to what Councilor Hebert was saying, is that families that aren't on the Cape and are worried and aren't able to contact their family members are calling our police department. And do we have any idea how many of those calls we responded to during this couple of days?
Volume-wise,
Catching up,
no.
sorry.
I don't know if the chief has he departed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he has.
Well, I'm gonna guess it was
I-
at least 1,000, so.
They're very responsive. They go out and they help. They'll help transport. Our senior center, communicates with individuals as well. So, but again, it's a matter of community and stepping up and making sure those who are in need are taken care of. So, but I can get you those. I'll ask the chief. He'll be able to give me stats on that. Okay.
Councilor Wallace?
Thanks, Mr. President. Thanks, Mark. I have a curiosity, and I know this isn't really in your bailiwick, but if you could help me out with this. I have a friend of mine that's a tree surgeon, and he's not on the Cape, but he's been doing it a long time, and he was explaining to me, because it seems like every time we have one of these wind events, we lose more and more trees, almost exponentially. If you remember the first one we had, Riley, I think we had a 93-mile-an-hour gust, and we lost trees. But in this last one, Skylar, I don't believe we had a gust over 60 miles an hour, but we lost many more trees, 200 trees or something to that effect. And many of these trees came in contact with wires. So I called my tree surgeon up and I said, why is it that, we're losing more trees with less wind? And he told me, and I don't know if this is congruent with what we know here, but he says that in many, many wind events simultaneously or in close succession to each other, the root systems actually weaken with every event.
Yep.
And so he was saying that if we have another event, we could actually find ourselves in a worse situation than the previous event. So I think what we've talked about, well, what I've heard on the radio is that we could be looking at another event on Tuesday, late Monday or Tuesday, where we could find ourselves back at exactly at the same place we were last weekend, or on Tuesday. So what my question is, all those trucks from Eversource and Xfinity, Comcast, whatever it might be, whatever company, I've noticed trucks that were coming from like New Orleans or someplace all over the eastern part of the country. Are they actually going to depart prior to Tuesday and then have to turn around, maybe come back?
I guess I'll use my president of Eversource card to answer that one. I don't know the answer to that, but I do have to say, as long as to have people still without power is very concerning and frustrating. But Eversource communicated directly with us through the event, and to the point where I was talking with their dispatchers even, and making sure that our Public Works Department, we gave them direct contacts to make sure if they needed trucks, if they needed a piece of equipment that they didn't have with them, we would get out there, we would assist, we would help them identify location of trees. So we're trying to do everything. I heard much the same, and throw in the ground's thawing. So if those roots loosen and the ground's wet and not frozen, I think you're more susceptible to the trees going over, so.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think you should laminate that card.
I
Gotta
know.
keep that protected.
It's in my drawer in the other
Like,
room.
When you make phone calls, we can get you like a cone of silence. that
This
lowers
guy's gonna, he's
down,
gonna
but-
regret the day he handed that to me, I'm sure.
Counselor Neary?
Mark, I just had a question on these reverse 911 calls. Where do those numbers come from? How does the town accumulate those? The reason I asked that is when I was on the campaign trail, all the numbers that were provided to me on the voting list, like 1/3 maybe actually were in service. So is there a method where the townspeople can make sure that their numbers are on that so they can be updated in
We take them from various databases, and the police department does that for us. In our case, I'd have to talk to the schools if those two databases are checked against each other. We actually get calls from Mashpee, so they must have one of my phones, when they do it. So
Sure.
I'm not quite sure how that worked, but that's okay. And so we also have employee databases so that, for example, if I close town hall, we can do a direct call to all employees, and I know you all are on that list, so that we can communicate with any and everybody who might be coming to town hall to know what's going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would that be, would it be maybe a thought to, whether it be on a tax bill or something equivalent, where the constituents, the people of the town could actually include a number? Because in many cases, we really don't want to share our number.
Yeah,
I
let
mean,
me ask
personally,
Lynn,
but,
do you-
but that might be something that could be added to
I'm going to ask
to a
Lynn to
bill.
come up, playing a major role for me. I think we talked pretty much almost every hour for the 2 days.
5 o'clock in the morning.
Go ahead. Well, that's not bad.
Good morning, good evening, Lynn Poyant, a Community Services Director. So on the town's website, there's, on the lower left-hand corner, there's a box that says Code Red. And if you go and click into that, you can create your own account, and then it will feed the town with the information that you have. We had done I can't even remember how many years ago, but we had done a serious collection to get all kinds of things so that people could get it on a landline, on a cell phone. They could get it via text. They could get it via phone call. They could get it via email. And so by creating your own account, it enables you to set up how you want to receive the information.
That would be terrific to get that out, and again, maybe on a tax bill or something where people are looking at that bill, kind of an opt-in. Many people might opt out, but an opt-in doesn't
Yeah,
hurt.
and
for
many
those-
people do opt
yeah,
out,
in
but
need,
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Counselor Dagwan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was listening before I got here on the TV, and you were speaking about the Eversource and what happened with this particular storm, and I was wondering what was different about the response to this particular storm. In the past, we've had major snowstorms here, and pretty much Eversource kind of turned things around in like a day or so. I found that this time, both storms, particularly the second one, I thought, okay, those trees are already down, the wires they've dealt with from the first storm, that it would, they would turn around much faster. But it was, again, 2 days before things got back up. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just wondering what was different in the turnaround this time.
My observation is the number of trees that came down
Okay.
was significantly different. I'd have to get the stats, but I would say more than double the number of trees in this event.
But we had the 90 miles per hour winds at the first storm.
Yep.
So I thought it pretty much took care of all the loose trees and
It
branches.
did, well,
and it did.
obviously, I think Councilor Wallace's, discussion with the tree surgeon that he knows probably is fairly accurate. He very well could have loosened them I was talking to a guy who runs a local landscaping company, and he had noted that. I've talked to our people. They felt that the combination of the heavy snow, the wind, even though it was less, and the wet soils rather than frozen ground played a big part in that. You know, at the meeting, there was a lot of discussion about the pruning and the removal when we know that we're susceptible as a result of a location of a tree or branches. So I think Eversource seemed to feel that that was a big issue. Several of us, I didn't bring it up on the floor of the discussion, but some of our delegation brought up the age of the infrastructure. And that wasn't addressed at all, so I don't know if that was valid or not, but they seem to feel the poles, transformers, et cetera, failed in many cases because they operate to fail, and they could be very old, but they're not replaced until they fail. And so we had failures. I don't know if that's accurate or not, though.
Now, I suggest, the suggestion you made about the amount of water, the first storm was just a lot of rain.
Yes.
So, and then to have snow on top, that may have loosened the soil and stuff too, and didn't need to take that into consideration. But I also I volunteer at one of the shelters here in town, and the director was very pleased that there was some place to send some of their guests, particularly after the second day. We had several small children. One of them, she had 2 infants in there, and it was just cold. And so the second day, they were able to send them to a shelter here, and so they could, wash the children up or just be in a warm place, have some hot water. So they did want to congratulate the town on providing that kind of security for them, a backup, I should say.
Again, we're glad to be able to help those in need. So police department did a great job.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mark. And Elizabeth Jenkins is with us now. Now you have the floor all to yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, counselors. Elizabeth Jenkins, Director of Planning and Development. Mark asked me to come tonight just to brief you on this Opportunity Zone effort. The Opportunity Zone program was created by the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, and it's a federal program that provides tax incentives that allow private entities to reinvest capital gains into privately created funds called opportunity funds. Again, as Mark said, the overall objective of this program is to stimulate private investment in disadvantaged areas with the potential to support business growth, housing, and commercial construction. So opportunity zones are based on eligible census tracts within municipalities. The tracts are nominated by governors across the nation, and the designations are finalized by the U.S. Treasury Department. In Massachusetts, the governor can nominate up to 138 tracts to be opportunity zones. In Barnstable, we have 5 tracts that are potentially eligible for opportunity zone designation. And based on our population size, we can apply for designation of 1 or 2 tracts. So based on the application that came out last week, it looks at demographics, planning efforts, and potential opportunities for investment in the census tracts. We feel that on the map shown here, tract 153 really checks all the boxes for the potential for qualification for an opportunity zone. So we do intend to submit that application by the March 22nd deadline.
All right. Any questions for Elizabeth? Councilor Hebert?
Thank you, Mr. President. Elizabeth, in layman's terms, what will be the benefit if this track happens to us in terms of how funding is developed? What does it really mean to us?
All right, so it's really a private sector program, again, that allows investors who maybe don't have the experience or expertise to be able to invest in these types of opportunities to roll their unrealized capital gains into these opportunity funds. So if we were to get designated, then there would be the opportunity for a private entity to set up one of these opportunity funds to funnel investment into this district, and it can support really a broad range of things. And again, I'm not going to pretend to be a kind of a real estate tax investment expert on this, but you know, they can invest in businesses, they can invest in construction efforts, and get essentially tax advantages because of that. So, you know, our municipal role, and again, is applying for this designation, but the idea is that it provides an additional incentive for investors to get favorable tax treatment for potentially investing in either companies or construction projects that would be ongoing in this tract.
So did you choose the 153 area because it's got less development there? Is it greater potential?
Yeah, so you know, perhaps the map is not is not clear, but 153 in this case includes the downtown Hyannis area, the growth incentive zone, the majority of the Route 132 and Route 28 commercial corridor and regional commercial center, as well as the industrial park. So when looking through the legislation, potential opportunities were things like downtowns and main streets, industrial opportunities. So again, we felt 153 was qualified. Certainly the decision point here is whether to apply for a second one. So I think that was one of the points where we were certainly looking for feedback on. But again, in going through the application, it asks you questions like, you know, what kind of planning efforts do you have in place? Is your community offering other sort of incentives? Are you allowing for as of right multifamily development? And we feel like 153, again, through the growth incentive zone and through kind of the efforts that we've done around planning for the commercial corridor and the industrial park, really checks all the boxes.
So the 126, forgive me for asking all these questions, the 12002 is totally separate from the 153.
So it's a different census tract, yep. So with its own set of demographics, it's a little bit awkward. I mean, our census tracts, you know, you have to choose basically. So we can, you know, we can put in again up to 2 applications. I think 153 is the easy one, but perhaps folks who are a little bit more again experienced in the potential advantages might see opportunities in other tracts that we should take advantage of.
Thank you.
Councilor Flores?
Yeah, I was just trying to get my arms around the exact location. The map was kind of confusing to me. And you're saying that the north is that the Mid-Cape Highway or what is that on the north side?
Sorry, so yeah, bounded by the Mid-Cape Highway on the north. Sorry, I get so used to looking at these. The Mid-Cape Highway on the north, Yarmouth on the right side. Again, you see kind of Hyannis Harbor and really almost exactly parallel to the growth incentive zone boundary there. And then you see Route 132 running diagonally through there as well.
Is that circle the airport rotary?
That circle is the airport rotary, yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Biedenbender?
Apologies if you explained this already, but if we have the ability to apply for more than one, what would be a reason why we wouldn't just apply for the second one?
No, I think we could, you know, we could absolutely apply for another one. But again, as we watch through the application, you know, it's a brief application, so it's certainly not a matter of it being a heavy lift. But, you know, it asks you to kind of describe the demographics, which would be easy. The second, it's kind of the second 2 considerations, which are kind of planning and programming efforts that are ongoing within the district. I think the idea here being leveraging local work that's been done to promote investment, and then potential opportunity. So in 153, you know, we can check boxes like again, multifamily as of right zoning, you know, business improvement districts, housing development incentive programs. All of those things are available in 153, and we just have a lot harder time checking the boxes in some of those other districts, as well as the potential for some of those other opportunities, commercial and industrial opportunities. They're largely residential census tracts. So, the ideas of supporting business incubators, supporting large-scale multifamily development, I think really at the probably the very big scale that this program is designed to support, is less likely. But again, if there are folks that see opportunities here, we're certainly willing to do the work to designate another tract.
And is there a cap on the number of applications that the state's going to take? I mean, is it like a first come, first served basis? Is there like a total of 30 projects that it'll approve?
Yep, so the number of tracts that each municipality can apply for is based on the size of the municipality. So Barnstable qualifies to apply for up to 2 tracts. In total in Massachusetts, again, based on, I'm not exactly sure, probably our population, the governor can nominate up to 138 tracts. My guess is that, in dealing with programs like this before, he will be looking for some sort of regional parity. I think when you look across Cape Cod, 153 probably is uniquely qualified in our region, so I think that's a great advantage for us in terms of designation. And one of the questions in here certainly is looking at the potential regional advantages that investment in the zone would play. So again, I think 153, given the presence of downtown Hyannis and really the industrial park and Route 132 corridor, again, is a very strong candidate.
Basically, the zones outside of 153 don't have the infrastructure and density would be the underpinning of a lot of economic development.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're much more single-family residential in character, but there's some overlap here, so.
We're trying to address those issues, but we're not there yet. Councilor Flores.
A couple of other quick questions. If we were to be awarded this opportunity, would this impact what we are now trying to do with the Kmart Mall through the Airport Commission? Would it make it a more saleable, a more likely place that someone might want to invest?
I mean,
What would be to
potentially.
their
I think,
advantage?
again, as President Steinhuber says, it's the idea is supposed to give economic development advantages to areas where investment isn't being fully realized. So I think when we look at the Kmart Plaza, that's certainly one area where there is the potential for opportunity. Again, the participation in this will be largely driven by the private sector. The investors are private sector investors. The funds are created by private sector investors. So, but again, I think the kind of the volume of opportunity within an opportunity zone. Again, there are kind of various things that you can invest in, again, whether they're real estate or interest in a business, but having those sort of opportunities there.
How is it
a
that
good thing.
Independence Park is included as part of a low income community census tract when in fact there's very little available land left there? They're building a high-end condo senior citizen building. Joe Keller's putting up a pretty high-end apartment complex on the corner of Independence and Mary Den. How is low-income community census determined?
Yeah, so I looked at that before I came here tonight because I was curious as well. So it's based off of income levels in the 2010 census. And again, our census tracts are a little bit awkward here. This is something we struggle with a lot, but I think when you look at there's not a lot of residential development in 153, but I think when you look at it in aggregate and you kind of turn the clock back to 2010, there are certain areas that host populations that would qualify for those poverty designations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but it is confusing. And for me, though, the financial piece, how this works, and moving, I mean, you're doing a lot of work to get this accomplished. So if we are chosen to be one of these, how do we get the word out to the average person? And I believe the president and several other councilors know a lot more about the finances, but how does the message get out to potential investors that this is an opportunity zone for them? How does that happen?
That's a great question, and that's something that we really are working on right now our strategic communications regarding economic opportunities that are unique in Barnstable. We have a number of unique designations. Our status as a gateway city. Again, if we were to be nominated here, there's other sorts of eligibility that's very unique to Barnstable that certainly we don't see throughout the region. So one of the things we have been working on is kind of a strategic economic development communications plan. We started to roll that out through the revamp of the Business Barnstable website that we debuted here a few months ago, again, to kind of give a portal for potential investors to see all of those opportunities, kind of a clearinghouse. I think a lot of folks communicate through that kind of digital media right now, and my thought was their first thought was probably to go to a website and see kind of all those opportunities. But that is something we're working on, is again kind of packaging together the different sort of incentive programs that are available, whether they're federal like this one, state or local. Some of our local opportunities through EDIP or the Housing Development Incentive Program, and figuring out who's most interested in those and how do we reach them.
Okay.
So again, that's kind of part of an economic development strategic communications plan that we started working on but continue to refine.
Thank you.
Any other councilors? Councilor Dagwan.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask how many residents that we know of that live in the Independent Park area. I was a census taker in 2010, and it really wasn't that correct because my address was not even included in the census. Our names, and I was a census taker, so I found that, kind of interesting that it wasn't as accurate as it should be. But many of the houses that I went to, I didn't find people who, we had a lot of immigrants that were in the area, and people didn't speak the language, and it was really hard to get a good count of who lived where, who owned the property. But I was just wondering, I heard one of our councilors speak about Independence Park, and the residents, and are they looked at as medium income people that are living there, or is it low income, and how many are there?
Yeah, so I can get you more detailed information. Again, a lot of this data analysis is done based on that 2010 census, but we are gearing up for the 2020 census. So something that we will have to participate in is essentially a process, LUCA, I can't remember what it stands for right now, where we do go through and kind of verify all those street addresses through a pretty hands-on process with the Treasury. So that's something we're gonna start paying attention to a lot. But certainly the demographics are changing, especially in the industrial park. I don't think the planners 10 or 20 years ago would necessarily think about the land use mix in the industrial park the way it's played out. We have 120 affordable units in there through the Village Green, 29 units coming online through that private apartment project, as well as the additional units as part of the senior care. So it's really becoming more of a mixed-use economic center than an industrial park. I think we have to start changing the way we talk about it. So I've been referring to it as the Hyannis mixed-use industrial commercial center, because again the character of the area is changing. So I can follow up though with more specific demographics for what's existing, as well as the kind of numbers that are there for the projects that are either being constructed right now or have recently come online.
Any other councilors? Councilor Flores.
Just another quick question. I just want to follow up from the last meeting that we had. Have we redefined what we mean by family when it comes to these apartments? I know it's a different term, but could you just...
Yeah, so we're definitely looking at that. As you said, as we talked about last time, our zoning definition is extremely antiquated. I haven't gone all the way back, but my guess is that it, probably came online somewhat the same time as zoning came online. Defining it is a little bit more complicated because, we're going to have to certainly live by and enforce that definition. But we started to do some research in terms of other communities and how they're applying that. So that's definitely something we'll come back to.
Thank you.
I think it includes people you stay with when your power's out.
Exactly.
Vice President Crocker.
I lasted for 6 days, the first one, and 2 days this one. I want to applaud you for taking on the initiative. I know that the original application has to be in by the 22nd. Do you have any other date lines or thresholds that we might be seeing as we go forward here?
Yep, so the application deadline for municipalities to the governor is March 22nd, and it's a little bit confusing. If you're following along with this, you'll see in some cases that it looks like the governor has to nominate by March 22nd, but he can actually apply for an extension, which we assumed he will do. So his deadline for nominations to the federal government is April 22nd, and then the deadline for the federal government to designate the tracks is May 22nd. So extremely expedited in terms of a federal government program, that potentially by May 22nd, these opportunity zone designations could be in place and available to investors.
So on May 22nd, if approval and if we're in that slot the whole way, this could be a viable option for investment opportunities?
It appears so, yes.
Okay. And I wouldn't want anybody to think that the town of Barnstable created these zones like the 153 that's being nominated. This came out of a state census program, which was probably the federal census program at the end of the day.
Yep, again, these are our census tracts,
okay.
which are, aggregated based on kind of smaller
Yes.
groups. And yeah, we don't have any control over them. Really, they are something we struggle with because sometimes they do, mix kind of neighborhoods of very different character together. When we looked at 125 and 12602, they kind of split West Main Street in half. We were thinking, how could we put West Main Street in here, but that you can only get the north or the south.
So we all have areas we would have liked to see it expanded over, but we can't do that because these have to be specific to the census zone, am I correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so I
exactly.
want to make sure everybody understands that. Secondly, when you look at the programs and the benefits, will they be administered by the towns? There's no overlying zoning. There'll just be an opportunity in the tax code for these people. Is that what I'm understanding about the program?
Correct. So it's a federal tax incentive that's administered by the IRS and the U.S. Treasury Department. So not, as far as I can tell, and this information has all come out pretty quickly, but no kind of municipal participation in the program other than the, kind of the
Right,
promotion.
filling
as
out
an
the application.
opportunity.
And the last one is, there seems to be a little discussion here about how we qualify for the lower level here. That seems to be perking up more than once. Could you explain how we became a gateway city, what our criteria was for income, and how certain parts of Barnstable have qualified?
Yeah, so again, very similar idea there through the Gateway Cities program. The idea being to give economic development advantages to places where that aren't seeing the sort of investments realized that communities would hope. So the Gateway Cities program is actually based on income, race, and educational attainment, I believe. I confuse it with environmental justice zones, which is another federal program. It might be percentage of foreign born, I think, for gateway cities. So Barnstable as a whole qualifies as a gateway city, partially because of the census tracts you see here as the Opportunity Zone program. But that's another great, again, opportunity in terms of economic development and the state, as they offer businesses advantages and incentives, they look at funneling those first to Gateway Cities programs. I know a number of the grants that we pursue are available only to gateway cities. So again, kind of reflective of our population, but some kind of tremendous advantages to the town as a whole.
The town made no representations to be eligible. We fell into eligibility, and now we're applying for the options because we are eligible. Is that a correct
So
way to
all
look at it?
this eligibility is based on the data in the federal 2010 census. So
Terrific, good job. Appreciate you taking advantage of it. Thank you. Not advantage, appreciate you working it. Thank you.
Any other counselors? All right, well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I really appreciate the information. Good job. Thank you. All right, Vice President Crocker, could we please act on the minutes of March 1st, please?
Yes, Mr. President. In our packets tonight, we have the Town Council meeting of March 1, and it's a very thick package, and I move it for approval as drafted.
I have a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes from March 1st, 2018? And that is unanimous. Moving into communications from elected officials, boards, committees, staff, commission reports, correspondence, and announcements. Councilor Flores.
Just a reminder that on next Wednesday, March 21st, from 6:30 PM to 8:30 PM at Cape Cod Community College in their auditorium, the Nuclear Decommissioning Commission Advisory Panel will be holding its meeting here on Cape Cod. Normally, they are held in Plymouth. So for any area residents, and I'm sure we'll have some of the Cape Townwinders at that meeting, are more than welcome to attend. There'll be a number of folks visiting from different groups to give reports, and it could be an enlightening opportunity if you want to find out what's going on with the eventual closure of the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant. That's Wednesday, March 21st, 6:30 to 8:30 PM at the Four Seas.
Thank you for that. Any other counselors? Counselor Dagwan.
This is not coming up right away, but in April, the Hyannis Open Streets Committee has been working with our sponsors to put on this year's Open Streets on when we shut down Main Street Hyannis on 2 Sundays. And what we've tried to do is to offer 2 events before the tourist season, which is April and May, and then we do 2 after the tourist season, which is September and October. And it's free to the public to come down, and we're still looking for sponsors, volunteers to help out on those 4 Sundays, but the first 2 will be, the first one is April 22nd. So I'll speak a little bit more about that later on. Just want people to maybe put it on their calendar and think about it coming up next month. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and that is a great event. Councilor Neary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one more thing, as this will be the last town council meeting. A reminder that the town is putting out an RFP for purchase of the assets, 23 parcels in the town of Barnstable, and the bids are due by March 28th. So if you're interested in those parcels, you can go to the website and view them and hopefully bid on them. Thank you.
Bid high, bid often, right? Anyone else? Councilor Flores.
Just an observation of something that recently happened on Nantucket, and I don't know if we as a council can write a letter of support to town government over there, but there was an horrific act that was taken against the African Meeting House, which was around the corner from where I lived there for a number of years, and spray painted with terrible graffiti and terrible remarks. And I would hope that we as a council might take a position to support, if you will, town government on Nantucket and show our I guess, disappointment, horror, and disgust for something happening like that on Cape Cod and the islands.
When did that happen? A week and a half ago. For a point of clarification information, we do have a special town council meeting on the 22nd. So it is our regularly, it's not our last kind of regularly scheduled business meeting we'll have on April 5th, but we have a special meeting on March 22nd. We're having a panel and a discussion on retail marijuana and our moratorium, or how we're going to proceed. So that's a special workshop on the 22nd. Any other counselors?
That's correct.
No? All right. We're going to move into the orders of the day. Under old business, Councilor Rappacetti, could you please read item 2018-098?
Thank you, Mr. President. This may be acted upon. Item 2018-098, appointments to a board, committee, or commission. Resolved that the town council appoints the following individuals to a multiple-member board, committee, or commission. Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee, Hector Gunther from Osterville as a regular member to term expiring 6/30/18. Council on Aging, Janice LaRiviere from Centerville as an associate member to a term expiring 6/30/2020. Economic Development Commission, Hector Gunther from Osterville as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2018. Paul Kuzek from Osterville as a regular member to a term expiring 2019. On the Jane Eschbaugh Community Service Award Committee, Ann O'Neill Schultz from Centerville as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/18. Personnel Board, David Nolan from Centerville as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/18. Shellfish Committee, Paul Caruso from Marston's Mills as a regular member at large to a term expiring 6/30/2019. And Paul Kuzak from Osterville as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2018.
I have a second. Any council discussion on this item? All those in favor of moving the question? That's unanimous. This is item 2018-098, appointments to a board, committee, or commission. All those in favor of this item? And that is unanimous. Councilor Rapkosady, could you continue on to read 2018-099, please?
Thank you. And this may be acted upon. 2018-099, reappointments to a board, committee, or commission. Resolved that Town Council reappoints the following individuals to a multiple-member board, committee, or commission. Renewable Energy Commission, Jan Rapp as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2020, as written.
Second. I have a second. Any council discussion on this item? Councilor Rapkosady?
I just want to say that I want to thank everyone who steps forward to volunteer on these boards, and we couldn't run the town without you. So thank you for putting your name forward and yourselves forward. The list on the website, we try to keep it up to date on the openings, and those do change pretty often because people do resign. So if you haven't been able to get on a board because it's full and hasn't had turnover, keep calling the office or keep looking, because there's always room for you. So thank you.
Any other councilors? All those in favor of moving the question? That is unanimous. This is item 2018-099, reappointments to a board, committee, or commission. All those in favor of this item? And that is unanimous. Councilor Tinsley, could you please read item 2018-101, please? I believe it's on
Certainly.
page 8.
Old business may be acted upon. Item number 2018-101, amendments to the Administrative Code, Chapter 241, Article 4, Municipal Organization, as written.
All right, and I know we've had a presentation on this, and we've had opportunity to review the organization chart, but Mark Ells is here for just kind of another brief overview before our discussion.
Good evening, Mark Ells, Town Manager. As already identified by President Steinhilber, I had done an overview on the 15th of February at our last, which I'd be more than happy to review with all of you if you wish. I had provided a comparison of what FY 2018 organizational chart, 2019 organizational chart. The modification to the organizational code is required to reflect changes as they occur. Specifically, we have very defined changes in the organizational structure, but I think what we found in going through the prior organizational code is it was in need. We're glad we're going through this process, because there was a lot of outdated language and things that weren't what we were currently doing in there. So this was a very good exercise. With me is Assistant Town Manager Andy Clyburn and Attorney Weil. Attorney Weil played a lead role in authoring the changes. All department heads reviewed them. Additional staff at the discretion of the department head reviewed this. And myself and the Assistant Town Manager are here to answer any questions as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions, council discussion on this item? Councilor Schnapp?
Mr. President? Just a couple questions. In the reorganization, there have been some changes in terms of entities becoming from divisions to programs, and then some areas becoming more departments, and I'll name two in particular. Licensing has become a department, and I just would like a little clarification to understand what's under licensing. And then I know that conservation has gone from a division and it's gone to a program. So just
Yeah.
wanted to understand your
Excellent
rationale.
questions. I think overall in our structure, you need to look in where a department to the subordinate the subordinate entities are. We do use terms as division, such as division, program, and actually bureau in the case of the police department, for that next level down below department. So then you begin to look into, okay, consistently within the department, what are they calling that next level? In the case of conservation, in the case of conservation, under planning and development, everything subordinate to the department is a program. It doesn't change, and then when you go to the actual, the person who is the administrator, conservation administrator, nothing changes as far as responsibility. Nothing changes as far as the role that they will play for our community within that department. In regulatory services, they're one below. In planning and development, they're one below the department, under Elizabeth in this case, rather than, the former position of Director of Regulatory Services. So to me, in a sense, I was looking for that consistency within the departments to make sure that we're calling them consistently. If we're put into Public Works, we would have called it a division, because below department, you go to division. In planning, you go to program. That's the significance of that. But I understand why somebody who might have been called another, unfamiliar with our organizational structure, might have said, well, that doesn't make sense. How does that work? And it's a good question from anybody looking at it. In the case of regulatory services, licensing was a division within regulatory services. We have eliminated completely regulatory services. We shifted conservation under planning. We shifted health under building. Licensing and weights and measures will stay as an individual entity, therefore elevating it to be called a department. They're direct reports to the town manager's office. So anybody who's at that level becomes a department. When we go to community services, and we've asked to move marine and environmental affairs out, they were formerly a division. If you look at their department, everything subordinate to department is a division. They become a department by shifting them out and elevating them. So if we go forward with an approval tonight, within the next 30 days, our Human Resources Director will go through and make sure that all the job descriptions and all of our collective bargaining agreements and are in line with the organization, begin discussions, if need be, with the respective collective bargaining unit to make sure that we've got everything all aligned properly, so that going into next fiscal year, it's all in order. And that's pretty much a standard way to make these modifications.
I have one follow-up. So just one follow-up. Is there any concern that in the reorg that some of the positions, I don't want to call them downgraded, but in the shift, that the classification might be at a lower level and that future recruitment would be affected by, okay. Because I would assume that you'd have to make them all even within a department, so.
No, actually not.
Okay.
The grade that you are paid is based on the responsibility that you are delegated. So just because you're a program manager doesn't mean that you're at the same grade as another program manager. Similarly, you may be a different paid division head, department head as well. Each of our department heads are paid at different grades, and it's based on a classification system that aligns the responsibility delegated to the position, and then you go and you do an evaluation in the marketplace. You do an evaluation for equity within the organization, and then you try to align everything properly. So no, not necessarily.
Good.
But that's a very good point. That's a point of confusion for a lot of our employees, because that job title is how they identify. And and it happens a lot when they ask for reclassification. Doing more doesn't necessarily mean that you should be paid more. Having more responsibility does. And so one of the things that our Human Resources Director will do as they go through this review process is making sure that we make sure that we're not asking anybody to do something that isn't clearly reflected in their job description. And that, if so, that we will look at that review and modify. So, yeah,
Thank you, Mark.
yes, of course.
Anyone else? Vice President Crocker?
Thank you. Thank you. I've been aware of your efforts to get here, so I'm just pleased that 25 pages that definitely needed a tune-up got a real good review. And the shifts seem sensible, and from all I can hear, everybody seems to be very understanding. I'd like to also congratulate you in bringing them in a format similar to what we're voting on tonight, so that they could also put together their 19 budget. So I thought that was extremely clever, and it shows a cooperative effort. But hats off to you and Andy for the job.
Thank you. I have to thank the staff too. Change is never easy when you're busy. And you want to change, get everything stabilized and get everybody back to work. And we're in the change mode, so we're looking forward to get everybody. That's why I say the next several years, once we get everything aligned, is going to be, very, very productive, I believe.
Any other councilors? Councilor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just on the logistics. I'm looking at the minutes, and it has all the exact same. Have there been any changes since you gave this to us last week, last month?
None.
Last time, no, okay. So there's a redundancy in the, enormous printing. I mean, we talk about trees going down, and I'm looking at a stack of papers over there. Is there a way logistically that we could, I mean, we're in the budget season, and I know you're dealing with stacks of paper this high, but if there are documents that we're going to use at the very next meeting, should we have some kind of a system that says that either if you bring it back or leave it there in the office, and so you have it, because we just have to be responsible. I know in the long run it doesn't cost that much, but the earth is in trouble, so I don't have the answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other councilors? Councilor Tinsley. All those in favor of moving the question? That's unanimous. This is item 2018-101. All those in favor of this item? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Great
your
work on
support.
this.
And just on a quick note, we are very mindful of paper. Mark Milne should be congratulated, and he came forward and looking at some software, but the opportunity to minimize the duplication of a lot of our invoicing and to put everything online, and then also the post-storage that's required was a tremendous effort on his part long-term to move us exactly in that direction. So,
Well, thank you to
yes,
Mr.
we're very mindful of that. Anywhere where we can do it, we will absolutely accommodate that.
We just need a little help in the council, that's all.
Well, I probably did that to you, so we'll take care of it.
Mark, I forgot to ask you before,
Yes.
who's the tree warden?
Who is the
Yeah.
tree warden? The tree warden works under Highway Division. Is it Noah? It was Charlie Genitosio. Jeremiah, thank you. I believe Jeremiah may be leaving though, so that's why I paused. So I got to check on that, and
Okay.
so, but it falls under DPW, under Highway.
Okay. All right. Just for information purposes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Now we're going to invite our finance director, Mark Milne, up, and I don't know if Andy and Mark, if you're joining this as well, but to do a overview of our capital improvement projects ahead of our next business meeting on April 5th, where we'll discuss each of these individually. Welcome, Mark. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good to see you all this evening. Good evening, counselors. Hope you're all staying warm. It's nice being here tonight. It's a lot warmer than my house. Just a few comments before my presentation on the book itself. I just wanted to go over quickly what's included in each chapter of your capital improvement budget booklet. Chapter 1 will provide you a summary of all the submissions that we received from the departments throughout the town. Chapter 2 talks about the review process that we incorporated this year in assessing the priorities and ranking these projects. Chapter 3 goes into the status of existing active capital appropriations that the town has. There are over 100 of them. Active projects with the status of the appropriation itself, not the status of the project listed in there. Our open budget website provides you also this information as well as the status of the project. Part 4 goes into the 5-year funding plan. This is a new section of the book that we're providing the community to give you a glimpse of as to what we realistically think we can fund over the next 5-year period. And I'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. So that's a new section that we've put into the book we didn't have before. And it's a lot of good information in there to analyze what we're kind of looking at for the next 5-year, our 5-year plan essentially. And then part 5 gets into the town manager's recommendations for proposed budget for next fiscal year. So with that said, let's move into the significant components of a capital budget and why do we do a separate capital plan. These are large expenditures that could affect future growth in our community, future operating budgets and service levels, and therefore they require more scrutiny. Since they're large in nature and do not necessarily reoccur year after year, we need to keep them separate from the operating budget so they don't obscure the operating budget. Many of these decisions can bind future governing boards as they are financed with bond issues. And this can decrease budget flexibility because we're locking future tax dollars into debt payments. And finally, a capital improvement plan will assist our community in better defining its priorities over the next several years. Submission review process that we put into place this year was a little bit different. We implemented a new process for evaluating all of these capital submissions. A new 2-phase process was conducted that included an all-day workshop with our senior managers and their key support staff members. And we ranked all the project submissions using 2 different distinct sets of criteria this time. The first round of scoring allowed all the department managers to present their top priorities to this group of individuals, and then we voted anonymously, ranking those projects against a set of 4 criteria. And then we took those projects and evaluated them, washed them through a second evaluation process as well, and then averaged the ranks in those 2 processes to try to come up with a better prioritization. This process alone, however, does not define or determine which projects are going to receive funding next year, but it provides a tool and an objective measurement to rank the priorities against all the other submissions. So here's the rating system that we used in phase 1. We essentially put them in 4 categories. These are projects we must do, projects we should do, projects that we could do, and projects that would be nice to do or desirable. So that was the first round, and there's more detail regarding each one of what a project would have to meet to fall within each one of these categories in the budget book itself. The second phase was the traditional rating system that we used, which looks at these 10 different criteria and how they impact the community in each one of these different areas. More extensive, much more time-consuming to evaluate. So we used to make all of our staff look at 130 some odd projects and try to evaluate them against these criteria. Enormous effort. Many of the projects aren't going to receive funding in the immediate fiscal year. We can only do so many. And so we shrunk that down and we focused on those 40 projects that we had in the workshop, and we washed them through this evaluation process as well. But the other 90 projects did not go through. However, those 40 projects were all of the highest priorities for each department and the ones requesting funding for fiscal year 19. So it was important that we get all 40 of those washed through both these processes. Here's a summary of the submissions that we're looking at. $250 million over the next 5 years, about $67 million in our enterprise funds, $141 million in the general fund, and about $40 million in our sewer construction and private way fund. 3 major funding sources for our capital program, these 3 different categories. And again, Chapter 4 provides you, this new section in the book provides you an illustration of a 5-year funding plan for each one of these. And we think that we can do $187 million over the next 5 years if all of our assumptions hold true. There are dozens of assumptions in there, and any one of them can change depending upon what happens at the federal, state, and local level. But if a majority of those hold true, realistically, I think we can have a pretty aggressive capital program over the next 5 years. But those will be, and all those projects listed in there will be reevaluated every year as well. So the way you see them illustrated today may not necessarily mean that's how they're going to get funded in years 2 through 5. That's going to shift from year to year depending upon priorities as they change. So here's a summary of our fiscal year 19 proposed capital plan. We're looking at 34 projects coming before you April 5th, starting in your budget hearings, totaling about just over $18 million. The largest area are the school facilities with 7 projects totaling $5.5 million, and our infrastructure, general fund infrastructure, with about $3.5 million consisting of 3 projects. And those are all detailed in section 5 of your book. Detailed descriptions are provided for each one of those projects under the town manager's recommendations. Here's a summary of how we're going to finance the enterprise fund program. We're going to use about $837,000 of reserves in 4 various enterprise funds. We're going to transfer about $59,000 of remaining funds in existing capital project appropriations for the golf course. They have been completed. They have balances left over. We're going to repurpose those for the new golf projects. We're proposing $2.3 million in new bond issues to finance some water and sewer capital projects. Those bond repayments will be provided for from future water and sewer revenues, not general fund taxation. We will also be applying to the Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust for financing those bonds. They offer a 2% interest rate. These projects qualify, as well as the possibility of some principal subsidies. So we do that with all of our water and sewer projects. And with the airport capital projects, the ones being proposed are eligible for Federal Aviation Administration, as well as the Mass Department of Transportation reimbursement. So about 90 to 95% of those project costs are going to be eligible for grant reimbursement. And you can see down the bottom of the chart here that those are the balances in the various enterprise fund reserves certified at the beginning of this fiscal year, from which we will be drawing that $837,000 from. For financing the general fund capital program, we're looking at closed appropriations of $383,000. We've identified 2 projects that have been completed with remaining funds. We're going to repurpose those for some new municipal facility projects. We're asking for proposing $4.1 million in capital trust fund reserves to fund our infrastructure projects, some municipal and school facility projects. And we're proposing almost $8 million in new bond issues for a waterway project of $1 million, municipal facility projects of $1.8 million, and school facility projects totaling $5.1 million. And then the school department's going to be using a small portion of their revolving funds to finance 2 small school-related projects, and those are in your Part 5 of the under the town manager's recommendations as well. Down at the bottom there are reserve balances that were last certified as of July 1st, the beginning of this fiscal year. Our capital trust fund has just over $15 million in it, and our general fund free cash has about $16.2 million. Also part of the capital improvement program, we're bringing forward a request to transfer $4 million of those general fund free cash reserves to the capital trust fund, dedicating them to the capital programs in future years. So finance the sewer construction and private way program. We have 4 projects. 3 of them are design projects associated with sewer projects. 2 of them preliminary design only, and they total $971,000. We're going to take this money from the balance in the sewer construction and private way fund, and as of today, that fund has $15.4 million in it. So in conclusion, I would just like to thank all of our senior managers and their support staff who participated in this new evaluation process that we put in place this year. as well as our Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee, whose involvement and recommendations have been provided have been helpful suggestions to improve our process in our capital budget document, and they will be providing you a report on this plan prior to your April 5th public hearings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and I appreciate the brief overview before we dig in on this on April 5th. And originally, we thought maybe we'd have this as part of town manager communications, but I think it made more sense to have it ahead of the new business items here, which is all the CIP items. So, any general questions for Mark? We'll get into individual stuff on the 5th, but Councilor Flores?
Yes, thank you, Mark. As usual, a good presentation. Just a quick question on the enterprise fund reserves that were certified on July 1, in particular the airport. I know we've made some transfers. I know their budget has been down due to the loss of Island Air and other revenue opportunities. What is that figure now? From a financial perspective and from sort of a safety net perspective, what is your feeling on the remaining balance after all these transfers we've done?
Yeah, this level right here of $2.3 million is the optimum level that I feel comfortable that they should have going into a fiscal year budget. However, due to their certain circumstances that they're currently under right now with revenue contraction in particular, they're going to be drawing upon this reserve unless that changes. So we are looking at that. We're talking about that. We're concerned. We're looking to see if we can improve that. There's been a lot of movement in ground lease talk about in that area, and so yeah, it's becoming a problem. The revenue contraction at the airport, it has been for a couple of years now, and we recognize that has to improve.
Will the new proposed airline that will be flying between Nantucket and Hyannis, will that help alleviate?
Any additional business and traffic that they can get through that airport should provide them some improvement.
Because there is a new proposal for another firm to begin to fly between the island and Hyannis. That would include the sale of gas, which I know they lost a lot of money.
Yeah, there's a lot of residual benefits for traffic, rental car concessions, and other types of revenues like that, in landing fees and so forth, in the sale of jet fuel.
Thank you.
Councilor Biedenbender?
Mark, thanks. This is a very basic question. I was just trying, so this section here, I was trying to understand where it has department priority. At first, I thought this was legitimately like a 1, 2, 3, 4 ranking based on the previous chart that you showed, but then I was looking and then those numbers didn't add up. So then I was thinking it was that other chart you showed where you get 4 points for this, 3 points for this, and it was an aggregate, but that didn't add up either. And then I was thinking, okay, so then it's just, this is our number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th priority, but then I'm looking at one section and there's numbers missing, so I'm not sure, I didn't quite get how those numbers worked.
That's page 4?
Page 4, yep.
Page 4? Yeah, the priorities that you see, department priorities that you see on page 4 is the way the department submitted that project. This is their number 1 priority, their number 2 priority, their number 3 priority, and so forth.
So,
it's different than the ranking, the results of the ranking that we did.
okay, and so then on this section of the DPW section, so it goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there's missing 12, and then 14, 15, 16, so where did those projects go?
They went under the, some of them are listed under the Sewer Construction and Private Way Improvement
Okay.
Fund on page 3.
Okay,
You'll see that we broke out the projects that DPW submitted specifically associated with sewer construction, and we
gotcha.
put them in a
I
separate
see 'em. Yep,
area.
thank you, sorry, this is the first time I've ever
Sure.
seen anything like this, so just trying to make sense of it, thanks.
Councilor Wallace?
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. With respect to this slide here, the enterprise fund reserves that were certified on July 1st of 2017, were there any enterprise funds that were certified for Sandy Neck on that date as well?
Yes, there were, all
And do you
8
know,
of them.
do you know, would you happen to know what that amount would be?
It was over $900,000.
Thank you. If you've been to the beach, it's a little scary right now. And I'm just wondering what there might be there for,
Yes.
right, you know.
That's what it's partly what it's there for, is to help situations like that.
Is there an annual budget, line item that's set aside for dune replenishment?
Right now, we have $55,000 in for dune replenishment in their operating budget, and I'm in discussions with the manager out there to see if how much more, if any, they will need on top of that.
Yeah, I've, taken a visit to the, obviously in my precinct, taken a visit to the beach, and I remember after we had the nor'easter known as Nemo, I believe we brought in 11,000 cubic yards of sand at the time at a cost of around $123,000. This is decidedly worse than that. Probably we're down to maybe 25% of the dunes. So just from my perspective, this could turn out to be a rather expensive proposition. And I know that my fellow town councilor here was at the last Sandy Neck board meeting with me, and if the town council president could find his way clear for them to do a presentation to us sometime during committees, boards, and meetings in the not-too-distant future, I know that this committee would really appreciate it. We have received a grant, as you know, to study the alternatives to sand replenishment, and I think they'd like to have an opportunity to share that with the entire town council. So if you,
Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
They
for
have
having that
shared
information.
that, but maybe after the budget season, we'll have them come by. Any other questions for Mark? Councilor Flores?
Yeah, it's not so much a question, it's really just a comment to support what fellow Councilor Wallace has just suggested at the Sandy Neck board meeting recently. We had taken a look at some very serious damaged beachfront erosion. Pretty much where all that sand went a few years ago is now gone. It spread out pretty much right across the entire shoreline, getting close to the parking lot. And thanks to the police department, they did take a number of drone-related pictures. And when you see the pictures, you see a very stark contrast in terms of what was before the storm 2 weeks ago and what it is as of now. So something's going to have to happen there.
Getting a little off track with subject matter, so I think Town Manager Mark Ellis has an update on some of the things we're doing out there.
Relative to the recent storms on the north side, the staff is quantifying their recommendation as far as replenishment of sand on the north side, and they'll have those numbers to me shortly. So we'll be able to, bid that out and be able to come in if needed with a request beyond the 55,000 to be able to address those concerns. Earlier, I identified the permitting opportunity to expedite what's involved. I think we may be all set there, though, as far as replenishment. I think more broadly, certainly my office and staff are always available to meet with boards and commissions to really come to some closure on these issues along the north side. And I'm always available for that, so we'll continue those discussions.
Okay, yeah, my original question was based on the fact that there was no enterprise fund reserve listed out on the certification in this slide, is why I was concerned about the situation. I was afraid that we may not have any. But I'm glad to hear that we have over $900,000 available. Thank you, Mark, for taking good care of that for me.
All eight have reserves, actually. I only showed the ones where we're asking to use portion.
Yep. Any other councilors? Councilor Schnapp?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mark. I'm going to switch over to schools, and on page 35, you've made note that the state reimburses the town for school construction projects at the rate of 64%. Are there certain criteria on what type of school construction projects receive that reimbursement, and how does that reflected in the capital budgeting process?
Yes, the Mass School Building Authority has a program that assists school districts with rebuilding, doing major renovations and additions to school facilities. The projects that we have in this plan do not qualify for that program. However, we have one existing one remaining on the high school renovation expansion. We have one more year on that, and that's done. It's been 20 years since we've had participation in that program.
Councilor Bienbender?
So this is more a question regarding process, and it does touch on the Sandy Neck issue. So my question is, at what point in the process does it make sense to have discussions about other options? Because in thinking about Sandy Neck, particularly in light of recent events, I'm not so sure that replenishment really makes sense going forward and that there are other options. Those other options obviously have very different financial implications long-term, and wondering, wouldn't it be advisable, since we are going into budget season, that we would have a look at those options so we can make the smartest choice on whether the alternatives make more fiscal sense than what the normal response would be, or the normal replenishment approach?
Yeah, the manager does that, and we're not going to get into that discussion tonight, but that is being looked at actively. It's been a constant issue for several months, and the manager handles that.
Okay.
So we're not going to get into that discussion tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Any other councilors? Vice President Crocker.
Good evening, Mark. Thank you. Nice presentation as always. Waterways, you showed $1 million for bonding. I'm going to ask that when we look at waterways, we look at the success of our two dredging projects in East Bay, where we finally opened East Bay for cohogs after 26 years, only with no notice of expenditures in the dredging department. So anything in the waterways that comes forward, I think in a larger picture, we need to have the waterways really vetted with CPC funds for recreation, vetted with the sewer, because the new approval by the state legislature is for nitrogen removal, and certainly we took nitrogens out of East Bay, or we never would have opened for shellfish. So I know we're already in progress here, but as we go forward, I would just ask that we take the big look at waterways, because it seems as though it's an area we're going to put a lot of steam behind, clean up, and some long overdue efforts there. And I would appreciate a cooperative effort from all three on any project in that area. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Councilor Tinsley.
Just one thing in keeping with this, thank you again for your presentation. I'm one of the weird ones as a finance manager. This is one of my favorite parts of the year. I think you do a great job with the book, and it really is. But as a general question for the newer counselors, let's say we're at, I'm just going to open it up to what do I see here? Appropriation transfer order amount of $315,000 for the purpose of funding Finney's sewer expansion. What if we want to make that $1 million or make it $50,000? How does that process work?
Turn on the mic. An amendment would have to take place on the floor to do something like that. Is that right, Bruce?
I don't think you can increase it, though. We can only decrease. It can only go down. It can't go up.
With manager's approval.
Right. Any other counselors? All right. Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it. All right. So we actually got we have a lot of CIP items here on the agenda, obviously under new business. But we did get, speaking with our finance director and legal today, we got an opinion from bond counsel that we do not have to read these in separately, just to refer them to April 5th. We can read these in collectively. So Vice President Crocker, could you please make a motion on the FY19 capital improvement budget public hearings?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Motion to move the FY19 capital improvement budget to public hearings. I move that the FY19 capital improvement budget, consisting of the Town Council orders 2018-064 through 2018-097, as written, be moved to individual public hearings on each order number to be held on April 5th, 2018.
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor of this item, motion. And that is unanimous. And that ends the orders of the day. Our next regular business meeting is April 5th, but we will have a special workshop of the Town Council next Thursday, 7 p.m. on March 22nd. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Have a happy St. Patrick's Day.